coming up on Chopper's Politics.
Is it a vanity project for a Tory government?
No, it's anything but a vanity project. But you know what? All the doomsters slagging it off, I bet you they're exactly the same people that slagged off the Olympics in 2012.
Now, I have written more than 36 articles about today's subject, as well as discussing it on several podcast interviews. But last week, designers formally started work on plans for a new national flagship, a replacement for the Royal Yacht Britannia. The government's idea is to provide a launching pad for global Britain, but there are plenty of critics, not least former Prime Minister John Major, who said it was a national yacht that no one even wants or needs, former Conservative Chancellor Ken Clarke, who called it silly populist nonsense, and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, who called it a vanity yacht, which his party, Labour, would scrap and spend the money on fighting crime instead. But so far we haven't heard in detail from the government about the plans, until today, when my guest on this week's Chopper's Politics is Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary, whose department is going to have to find the money to pay for it. I caught up with Ben Wallace just after the event launch in Greenwich last week, when very appropriately he jumped into a Navy fast boat to race back to the Ministry of Defence near Westminster to speak to me, just as the heavens opened. Ben Wallace, welcome to Chopper's Politics.
Thank you.
Great to have you on your first time here. It's a moment of some note for me personally. I've written 38 articles since 2016 about why we need a new replacement for Royal Yacht Britannia. And here we are, we're in the MOD. You've announced this morning in Greenwich plans for a new national flagship.
Literally come straight from there. My trousers are wet from the Royal Navy gave me a brilliant lift on a fast rib.
One of the perks of the job.
Unfortunately, a hailstorm hit summer in London as I was coming back. Yeah, so we launched that in the Painted Hall in Greenwich. Over 100 manufacturers, designers, British shipbuilders, British engineers, just really exciting, and launched the beginning of the first phase, which is to get to a winning design in December, where we'll announce who's been chosen, and then the next phase will be, and who's now going to build it. So, yeah, good stuff.
And there's no mention of the word Britannia in your speech or the PM speech. Now, people see it's seen as a replacement for Royal Yacht Britannia. Is that for a reason?
No, I think it's because, you have to build a ship that's going to say what it does on the tin. And, being the national flagship is exactly what it is about. It's what Britannia was. Yes, it was known as the Royal Yacht, but it was also a great convener, a great ambassador, a great conference centre, a whole means. And indeed, it was also a potentially hospital ship in the Falklands. So, all of those things are more than just a Royal Yacht. And that's why, for us, it is the national flagship.
And this ship could have the same kind of utility. Could it be a hospital ship on an overseas combat?
It will have some national security capabilities. Quite important that it can do that. It will also have the ability to convene defence diplomacy. I mean, people really don't understand in the world of diplomacy. You've obviously got Foreign Office diplomacy and you've got economic diplomacy. The Chancellor will go around the world often in that way. You've got scientific diplomacy, and that's what global Britain is. It is not just military and it's not just foreign. It's all sorts of ranges. So for us, it is as much about delivering defence diplomacy. In this building yesterday, I signed an agreement with my Kenyan counterpart for a long-term defence cooperation agreement in Kenya. I'd love to have done that on the back of a ship in Mombasa. In Sicily last month, I convened my Italian defence counterpart, my Turkish defence counterpart on the carrier to have effectively a summit to discuss how we're going to support Libya. And, defence diplomacy is a really important part of global reach and global Britain.
It's a vanity project for a Tory government. I mean, John Major attacked it, the former Tory Prime Minister.
Yeah, but if memory serves me right, John Major commissioned a study or a new start into Britannia at the time. He might have slipped his mind at the time, but I certainly remember at the time it was true that Britannia was coming out of service because of her age and
the engine, I think.
The significant staffing. It was staffed from a 1950s, predominantly, I suspect, conscripted workforce in those days, a different type of workforce. No, it's anything but a vanity project. But you know what? All the doomsters slagging it off, I bet you they're exactly the same people that slagged off the Olympics in 2012. I mean, if you want my view, all the sort of sucking of teeth and it's all dreadful why we're having it. I remember in the build up to 2012, all of those people banging on about it. They just evaporated on day one of the Olympic ceremony. And, right now we're all sitting here proud of some of the gold achievement in Tokyo. Well, that's all really fed a generation as a result of 2012. And I think that's the same thing for this ship.
I wonder if the polling backs you up on that, because if you look at the polling, it's over 60s, over 50s like the idea, because those are the kind of generation who remember when the Royal Yacht sailed around Britain on its final voyage. I went to Formby Point in Liverpool. We all waved at the yacht. I mean, it was quite a moment. And people, when they see it, maybe when they see it at sea, they might have a different view of it as opposed to an idea on a balance sheet.
I think just like the 2012, the duty is on both us and industry to explain to the British public why it is of benefit. We can't take it for granted, and we can't take it based on memories. We can't take it. What I can say is when I do defence deals in the billions of pounds for this country, or my ministers do, of exports, they directly support British jobs, British innovation, British R&D, and that helps pay for the defence that we all want to have for our own soldiers. We cannot afford the best equipment on the world unilaterally, and not even the United States can either. So for anyone out there who thinks it's just about a budget, it's about burden sharing in exports. And so one of the reasons to have it is, when I stand on the carrier, it's made in Britain. And when I show that carrier to other nations, and at the same time I'm trying to sell ships or aerospace equipment to those nations, they get what Britain is. So it is absolutely relevant to the young people. If young people in my part of the world, in the north and west of England, where thousands of them work in the aerospace industry, it's important to their future, because it is in those shipyards, in those factories, that we are going to demonstrate why you want to buy British.
Well, let's talk about those billions then. Last week's notice talked about £150 million, and then today in the Painted Hall, Greenwich, you said it might cost up to £250 million. What's the difference, and why is there a difference?
I think last week's notice was a sort of technical guideline, but the actual decision I've made is that I'll commission a ship up to between £200 and £250 million. That's the ship price. Of course, competition will be important bit. Price will be an important part of it, but also so will innovation, social value, British build, British jobs. And, that is the decision I've taken. So that's the ship I'm going to commission.
But last week, the MOD said it's 150, not 250.
Well, it set out a technical advice document or something. But the last say is with the Secretary of State. So we had a discussion about it.
And it won't go more than that, because critics will be looking at that money thinking, why can't we spend on nurses and schools and other priorities?
Government is always about different priorities. This represents, I think, less than 0.1% of the defence budget, right? So, and it's not all in one day or 1 year. My defence budget is 42 billion pounds a year. That money will be spread over a number of years. It won't be an instant check. And at the same time, I manage huge expenditure, hundreds of billions of pounds over a 10-year period. So it'll be perfectly possible. And the usual, you could have spent more money on that. They said that about the Olympics 2012, right? Let's look at it the other way around, is if we don't continue to be a trading, exporting nation, we don't earn the tax revenues to pay for our health services and education.
Is that why you said it would pay for itself many, many times over? And the PM used the same language in his remarks in the Painted Hall today. What's that based on? Is there a business case you've got that we haven't seen yet?
Well, it's based on the fact that if I can use it to demonstrate Britain's successful craftsmanship, skills, technology, innovation, if we can use it as, a floating embassy, embassies cost money, around the world. The Foreign Office budget is spent on its embassies. We use it as conferencing. We use it as a convener. And indeed, if the royal family wish to engage with it, it is there to also showcase the royal family as one of our exports. And, that is what it's there for. And I have, as a department, huge amounts of what we call hard power under this bonnet. Hard power needs to be linked to soft power. It's fundamental. You don't.
But is there a business case? I mean, people talked about Britannia having these trade days back in '94 off the coast of India. They made hundreds of millions of pounds of trade deals. It was a focus for people to go and sign trade deals on board. Is there a business case for this?
Well, I think there is a business cause and case for it. I think there is a business case. If you're asking if there's a technical document with a breakdown, not at that level that I've seen, but it won't be hard for us to produce one based on, as you say, on Britannia's previous activity. But I don't think I need to reveal some secret document that doesn't exist. It's quite simple. It's the same as, have the Olympics 2012 paid for itself? Yes, it has, in my view. And it's paying for it right now.
In soft power, really, isn't it?
It's paying for its soft power. Businesses from 2012 are now spun off and are now helping all the other Olympics, and our knowledge, our security companies, our technology is out there, will be right there now in Tokyo to helping the Tokyo businesses. Also, secondly, another example of 2012 spin-off, young generation engaged in sport, probably across classes, across backgrounds, because geography in a way that hasn't. Well, that helps healthy lifestyles, healthy people, saves the NHS in the long run. All of that, I think, is why it will pay for itself.
Ben Wallace, you want to channel the 2012 Olympics with this new ship. How will this ship have the same impact on ordinary people as the Olympics did?
Well, it'll have an impact on Britain's economy, Britain's prosperity around the world, and Britain's image around the world. And, if we're sailing into ports with some of the best quality equipment in the world, if we're convening people together, and Britain is a great convener, one of her powers as a P5 nation in the UN and a G7 is that ability to lead and bring people together. So it'll affect us both directly and indirectly.
And if you look at, say, Air Force One, they're commissioning 2 new Air Force One planes worth $5 billion. There's no trade deal signed. It's basically a way to get the president around the world with a media corps costing $5 billion when...
Well, I think that's because the media are quite needy, aren't they?
Well, not all of us,
I think that's why it is. Without the media, I'm sure it'd be a much cheaper plane, honestly.
What colour will it be? Will it be red, white and blue?
Let's just get to the design phase. Yeah, Chris. Let's get through the design phase, and in December we can talk about it. I think the colour scheme is the last thing we're going to discuss. We need to. Well,
how about the name? That's something else. Well, number 10 want Prince Philip.
Well, I don't know. Number 10 hasn't talked to me about a name. There's been lots of suggestions. We've had suggestions. Again, let's do one thing at a stage. Let's get to the design.
Yeah.
Let's get to the build. I have to say, I've realised that one of the most conservative organisation on the planet is the naming committee of the Royal Navy. Who
are you on it yet?
I've
get on it now, Wallace.
I don't think I have the qualification of being a fleet admiral or something or whatever it's supposed to be. But I know that when I tried to suggest some new Royal Navy names, it was. It took nearly 2 years of heavy lifting to get them to change. So I think we'll do the name. We'll get to the name later.
Yes, it's not a yacht, is it?
It's a national flagship.
Yes. Will it be a Royal Fleet Auxiliary? I mean, I asked what it is because...
Will it be manned by the Royal Navy? It'll have a white ensign.
And that lets you build it in a UK yard because apparently we're signed up to all sorts of WTO rules. I mean, you can't just say it must be UK yard. No, it's not a warship.
Well, under the WTO rules are clear about national security. You can retain sovereignty for national security reasons. And that ship, as I've said earlier, will have a national security function as well. And we're confident, and all the legal advice is that within WTO rules, we will be able to build it in the United Kingdom and get on with it. And, if the WTO rules say it's okay for our national flagship, and if they say it's all right for Air Force One, I'm sure then they can say it's all right for our flagship.
You mentioned the royal family earlier. Do you envisage them taking holidays around the Scottish Isles on it?
I'm not going to get into the discussions about the royal family. I think I would direct your questions to the palace. I mean, our royal family are one of the best exports we have from this country. And wherever I go in the world, they are incredibly important to us. They're a great, great ambassador for this country. I was in Vietnam last week, staying in the famous Metropole Hotel, which was sort of the site in the North Vietnamese, the 1970s and 60s war, and Jane Fonda would stay there. And there on the wall is a picture of Prince William. So they're great ambassadors, and I think this is a flagship. It will be available, of course, to the royal family, and it will be available to wider government and maybe others.
A journalist, maybe?
No, I think you can follow in a tug.
Can you defend it? People like Tobias Ellwood say it'll be a problem defending it. You'll need to have... He's all sorts of plans. He's a Defence Committee, Select Committee chairman, I should say.
I think it depends where you go. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you
go into difficult, yes, exactly. If you go to places where there could be a problem, you'll have to look after it that way.
Yeah, but if it's manned by sailors, at the very least, they have own training to defend it and use it.
You said today it should be in the water by 2024, 2025, which is slipping on the date already because it was going to be in the water by 2024 and commissioned by 2025 in your release last week.
We're talking about the difference at the end of 24 and the early 25. And look, we've got still some way to go. We've got to get the design one of the challenges I have sitting here is how innovative I want it to be and how risky I want it to be. But risk comes time. If we jump in with both feet on an unproven capability or an engine that's never been used before, then all the track record of shipbuilding tells you that's high risk. And high risk means it takes longer.
You've made it green technology. That is high risk. I mean, green is
not
cutting
necessarily.
edge.
There's lots of different types of green technology. I mean, when your diesel or petrol car does more miles to the gallon than it has ever done, between 2004 and 2014, the average miles per gallon in cars doubled. It went from 24 to 46. And it doubled because of technology and traditional engines. So there are lots of ways to get more out of this ship, more innovative. There are examples of ships around here that mix basically sail and engine. There are experiments going on in different fuel types on conventional engines.
There could be a sail on it as well.
It could be all of those things.
Wow.
I'm open to all of those things. I mean, there are yachts, super yachts out there that have that. There are innovative engines looking at sustainable fuel.
Yeah.
So it might be a traditional engine. It might use a different fuel. That's what we want to see. But I have to balance how far Britain PLC sticks its neck out with timetable.
In your speech in Greenwich, you did say to them, it's a tight deadline, but I know you can do it. Can they do it?
I think, I mean, the people I've just met today, the designers, the builders, the innovators, they're all up for it. Some of them, and I met two designers today who are right now designing or delivering super yachts for clients around the world, global billionaire type clients, on time, on spec, on budget. And if you go to the commercial sector, whether it's super yachts or cruise liners or anything else, these guys move to a commercial time frame.
Are they building in the UK, these people?
Well, that's what we're going to do here.
But on their yachts on time, are they being built in Britain or overseas?
Some of them are building amazing ships. I met an amazing shipbuilder, Princess Yachts in Plymouth. Their order book is almost completely full. They employ 3,000 people and they make them here. Amazing shipbuilding or super yacht sort of design and manufacture and supporter in Falmouth. So yeah, we can do that. And so can the big boys. I mean, we shouldn't knock the fact that Germany and Holland seem to have been leading on super yachts. I think this is our chance. This is our moment to show we've got the best designers. A lot of those ships built abroad are built with British designers, right? And British components in it. So why can't we build the whole thing?
Will there be any private money involved in this? There was, when this project started pre-COVID in the Cabinet Office.
As you know, Christopher, there have been lots and lots of
I've written lots of the articles.
Fathers of this, people who have great ideas or great
but it was going to be sponsored in part by private business.
It's planned to come out of the Ministry of Defence budget.
All of it.
All of it at the moment is planned to come out of that. For me, it's important that I'm carrying that risk. I'm carrying that budget. So we're going to be in charge of it. But, there may come a time when we ask other people, it is a national endeavour and how they would like to show their support for the national endeavour. But at the moment, it's not a key plank of the business case that I need to ask somebody else.
You're not cutting anything to pay for the 250 in your budget?
We've talked about it's a tiny percent of the overall budget. And the way we'll deal with it is we can reprofile other programmes. I have programmes that are 20 years.
This is a 30-year project, right?
Yeah, so these things are doable. I don't want my colleagues in government to think, therefore, they can constantly come around and take my money.
Yes. So Rishi, if you're listening, don't worry about it.
He'll get his money back in sales through exports.
Yes, exactly.
And business revenues from business and corporation tax.
Labour have attacked it. Keir Starmer called it a vanity project or some such thing. That's part of the problem, I think, of not getting royal family buy-in, is that Labour see it as a political project.
I'm a North West MP, a Lancashire MP. I'm probably one of the first Tory gains in 2005 in that part of the world, before anyone had heard of the different phrases banded around. That's Labour's problem. It's Labour's problems to its own constituents. They're not patriotic about these sort of things. They don't understand the workforces in Lancashire. People in Barrow and Furness near me make nuclear submarines. They make some of the best equipment on earth, the most testing engineering. They're deeply proud of their product they make. People in Lancashire make aerospace kit and Typhoon and Eurofighters and F-35s. And they do that not just because it's a job, but because it's Britain and it helping keep us safe. And, it just sums up Labour, really. What side are Labour on? They're usually on, basket weaving, leftie, Islington nonsense. And that's what happens with Corbyn. And there we are. Proof in the pudding is last election.
I mentioned Labour because the original Britannia was a Labour idea, which Churchill then agreed to do. So it was cross-party, you see, in 51. That's why it matters.
Probably Labour might take a lesson from that was they won elections in those days.
And just finally, I mean, if you're naming any rooms on the new flagship
suite,
well, I'll take a small badge by in the toilets if it's perhaps a loose seat or something. Well, Ben Wallace, I think it needs explaining, and the explaining has started today, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and getting industry, all those. I mean, I met industries big and small from all over the country, from Scotland and Northern Ireland today, from the West Country, from all over the United Kingdom, are excited by it. They all want to have a go in delivering it or being part of it, contributing to it. And we should be proud of the people that want to contribute. We should be proud of what we're going to deliver. It starts today. And yes, we have to explain it. But, the Prime Minister is fully leading this. I fully support him. And, I can't wait to greet the Daily Telegraph to cover hopefully some export signing contract in a few years to come. And, I think it'll all be worth it.
Well, Ben Wallace, Secretary of State for Defence, thank you for joining us this week on Choppers Politics. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week, listeners. Thanks to my guest, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. Thanks to my producers, Louisa Wells, Edith Lampett, and of course, Theo Luludis. But most importantly of all, thank you to you for listening. I'd love to hear your thoughts on whether we need a new national flagship, and whether it might even have as much impact as the 2012 Olympics, as Ben Wallace said. Please email us, chopperspolitics@telegraph.co.uk, or find us on Twitter. We're at Choppers Podcast. And finally, if you can, please do buy a copy of the Daily Telegraph. You won't regret it. Until next time, though, cheerio!